Hello and welcome to Language, Culture, and Dr. Lou. And today I have what I think is a really fun video for you. It's about expressions in French that are really, really strange. So, as you might know, I love marveling at the weirdness of how we speak in a lot of languages. My last couple videos have been about the origins of some of the stranger and more disturbing expressions in English. And so I decided to take a dive into French. And so now we'll be doing some really weird expressions in French for this video. And for the next one after this, I saved some of the ones I find the most hilarious of all, the most funny. But these ones too, very weird, very strange, sometimes a little dark, other times just plain peculiar. And so come on, take a little trip with me through some strange expressions in French. And so what do we mean by streams? Well, for one, we have foyer du noir, which of course is to cross some black. And so what it really means is to be really overcome with sadness and depression. So if you're going through a period of depression or you're going through some really big sadness in French, you are crossing some dark. Um, and where does this come from? It's from in the 16th century, so like the 1500s, you have a lot of painters in Europe would literally cross some very dark things like burnt wood and all that, just to make the pigmentation for really dark paints. So crossing dark, and it started out by being able to paint really dark things, but now metaphorically, to cross some dark is to go through depression, which is kind of sad thing, but interesting origins because it comes from painting. And so that one's not the creepiest of them all, but it is a little weird. And so I decided to include it. But this next one, I like so much more. This one I find really funny. Avoir la gueule du bois. La gueule du bois is a wooden face, like if your face were made of wood. And so, what's that about? We mean to be really hungover by to have a wooden face. And what's it a reference to? Is to when you're hungover, when someone is hungover, they're really dehydrated, like a piece of wood is super dehydrated. Like this guy here in the picture right under me, he totally looks like he has a wooden face to me. Anyway, I think, well, that image, that's kind of what it expresses. Like, oh my God, I have such a wooden face that, my brain is stuck to the inside of my skull kind of deal. And anyway, I think that's a really good way to put it. Really interesting imagery anyway to have a wooden face. Anyway, I just had to include that one because I think it's kind of silly uh and in a way quite on point. How wood is all dehydrated and you have the icky dehydrated feeling when you're hungover. Anyway, um and so this next one, pédaler dans la semoule, which is to pedal in semola. This one means to really struggle with something, to really struggle, as in to flounder around and you can't really make something happen. That is pedaling in Samola in French. And so, of course, you can imagine that pedaling in Samola, the stuff, the flour we make pasta out of and all that. I mean, semolina, rather. Um, and that would be pretty difficult. And there's actually some regional variation to this saying, which I love, because, yeah, in most of France, when you're pedaling in some semolina, you're floundering, you're struggling, but down in a lot of the south of France, you're probably gonna find people who say they're struggling in yogurt. Yeah, struggling in yogurt is just as difficult to pedal in as semolina, of course. And oh, in Eastern France, over close to Germany, um, they talk about pedaling in sauerkraut, which is of course quite appropriate because they make quite a bit of sauerkraut over there. And so yeah, pedaling is Melina. It's a really flounder around because they're struggling so much with something, and I love the imagery of it. And so where does it come from? The world's most famous bicycle race, La Tour de France, where once every summer, usually starting in mid-June, ending in mid-July, around there. Uh, there's a bicycle race where the cyclists take a tour around the country of France that starts and ends in Paris, of course. Um, and so you can imagine they go over big inclines and declines and rough terrain, weird hills with curves and all this. So you're ending up dealing with a lot of really stuff, and so mishaps happen and all that. So that is seen as the origins of this expression right here. And no wonder the French would come up with something having to do with cycling for struggling, because Le Tour de France, that must be one of the most difficult feats to accomplish in the whole wide world anyway. At least as a smoker, it seems downright impossible to me, but hey, that's why I'm not an athlete. And so this next expression, I think, is uh, the darkest one so far. Coûter les yeux de la tête, to cost the eyes of the head. That's what we say when something is really extremely and way too expensive. And so it costs you the eyes out of your own darn head. And so that's got to be too high of a price for anything, right? Uh, which means you're going blind and whatnot just to be able to afford these things. And so, quite fitting if you're saying it's way too pricey, way too expensive, but so gross, you're blinding somebody in that expression. But on the other hand, is it really a whole lot more dark and gross than in English when we say if something costs an arm and a leg, right? That's you're not blind, but good luck with any mobility or anything like that. So yeah, on both counts, we have super dark expressions for something being way too expensive. And the French one scares me the most of all because, I can't imagine anything being worth the price of both the eyes. And so, um, and it brings to mind the scary story of Oedipus Rex. But anyway, let's not go into that. Let's just say this one is super dark, yet quite fitting in a way. And so, I do, yeah, think it's the darkest one so far, but not, at least in my opinion, not the very most disturbing one in this whole collection. So we'll get to other ones. And so this one, se faire rouler dans la farine, is to get rolled in flour. And in this one, in the metaphor, you are the dough, right? You are the dough getting rolled around in flour and manipulated. And so, what this means is if somebody tricks you, they really fool you, maybe to take advantage of you or to simply make a fool out of you. They're rolling you in flour in France. And this seems really fitting to me in French language because the French culture is indeed proud of their baking, right? Bread, pastries, all of this super important in French culture. So totally unsurprising to me to find that getting rolled in flour is how they put getting tricked and made a fool of. Um, so by the way, yeah, this one's kind of easy to remember because the fool is the dough in this one. Anyway, and so I do love sometimes idioms really um, illustrate important parts of a culture that they're from, and baking is indeed very important to French culture, at least. And so another expression that I wanted to share with you is to get raked, se prendre un râteau. And se prendre un râteau is we use it for when you fail miserably at seducing somebody, right? When when your attempt to seduce somebody else is embarrassingly rejected and rebuffed and all of that. Like, for example, um, oh, il s'est pris un râteau, he got raked, can be used in a situation where a guy, let's say, he takes a woman out that he hopes to date. It's on their first date. He's hoping to make it a real romantic date, and they go to a museum. Well, he uh, proceeds to impress her with his knowledge of all the impressionist painters and different movements of art and all of that. And then the end of the night, she just gives him a peck on the cheek and runs outside to an Uber that she has waiting to pick her up and drive her home. He just got raped in France anyway. Se prendre un gâteau. And to me, it's really funny because it's often to people people find it no less embarrassing than sideshow Bob does when he takes a rake handle to his face, right? Anyway, so that's to get raked. It's really to fail miserably at trying to seduce somebody. And so it's unsurprising that the French would have that expression that has to do with seduction, because of course they're quite known for that as part of their culture. And so this one here is quite different. It's to feel hit by a bar. And I mean by like, imagine like a big metal bar comes in and boom, takes you down, right? Just smack, knocks you out more or less. That's what we say in French, avoir un coup de barre, is if you're really all of a sudden hit with an overwhelming feeling of tiredness. All of a sudden you get so tired, just maybe sometimes this happened to me while I'm traveling and have been on my way to a destination for nearly 24 hours or so at a point. Sometimes, yeah, I understand feeling like you're hit by a bar. And and it really does yeah, bring to mind good imagery as well. And the next expression is the one, will I save this one for last because in a way it's the most disturbing of all, and it's the only one that I included where I would have to use a swear in order to translate it literally. And that's vouloir le beurre, l'argent du beurre, et le cul de la première. And that's to want the butter, and the butter's money, and the dairy maid's ass, right? That's wow, again, not surprising that the French came up with an expression that involves, you know, sex and sexual conquest and whatnot, because they're kind of known for this. But this one is really funny to me, especially um because in English we have a similar expression, but it's in English it's about eating cake. And so I guess first give you what we use to want the butter, the butter's money, and the dairy maid's ass to mean. Um, It's when you want to receive everything, when you get everything without giving a single thing in return, right? It's you just want you we're all like mine, 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 right? Without actually giving anything. And so that's why I would equate this to our expression in English to want to have your cake and eat it too. But this one, of course, the French expression is a little more sexualized, also involves uh food products, at least dairy, but yeah, it also ended up being just a wee bit about sex anyway. So I thought that was pretty good one to include. And I did have another one that I find really funny, but I had to use the F word to translate it. So that one got cut out of the video. Sorry about that. And like I said earlier, for next time, I have a video with the most hilarious of French idioms that I could find, like really, really hilarious and funny uh, in a strange way. Although most of them are not, don't have some of the dark qualities that these ones here did, but I like to marvel in the funny as well as in the darkness of things. So thank you for watching my video until the very end. I really appreciate that. And again, I got some really funny expressions in French coming for you pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. And please do give this video a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. And that way you'll never have to miss another one of my uploads. And so until next time, catch you around next time. And yeah, see you then. Bye bye.